Hello and welcome to Man, Woman, God. I'm Nikki and I'm here with my husband, Greg. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nikki.
Now, Greg, here's a word I want to throw at you. Pride.
Pride. Whoa.
Know much about it?
Whoa. Pride. Well, I know that it comes before a fall.
True. That's in the Bible.
I've fallen over many times.
Yes, I can vouch for that.
Yes. Well, it's true. Yeah.
But Greg, you know, I have to say, I mean, when we see it a lot in the Bible, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I saw this on Facebook, which, as you know, I do.
You're a Facebook addict?
I am. No, I'm not an addict, but I do like it because I've got a few people on there, like, you know, a few leaders in our community, and Christian leaders.
We have a Man, Woman, God Facebook
We do.
now.
That's good to mention that, Greg. But and I've got this on my phone, so I want to read it out. But this is actually by Derek Prince, who, of course, is not alive, but he had an amazing ministry. A real man of God. I love all his work. You know, he truly struggled with a lot of stuff, but God just kept bringing him out of it because he knew that God, you know, was the saviour. He knew that God was God and that he could help him. So this is taken from Derek's book, You Matter to God, and it says, and the reason Lucifer fell was pride. Now that's Satan. The most dangerous sin by far that ever threatens us is pride. It is a disastrous sin and we are all vulnerable to it in one way or another. It does not take much in the way of success for any of us to be easily taken over by pride. In fact, I have seen many ministries ruined this way. My personal prayer is, Lord, by whatever means is necessary, keep me from becoming proud. Wow, that's a prayer in itself.
It is. And this is where I have a bit of a, not a problem, but maybe not a clear interpretation of pride and our approach to pride, or, you know, how we handle pride, because, you know, we say we're proud of our children, you know, you're proud of your accomplishments, you're proud of all sorts of things, and it's like, is that good? Is it not good? Is it? How does God see that? Where does pride become the sort of pride that comes before a fall?
Yeah, well, look, of course, as with everything, I think there's a level of, yes, this is fine, but then things get blown out of proportion. As we know, Greg, in our society, things in our lives do get blown out of proportion.
Well, they do.
And you know, you have to look at first of all the Old Testament and the 10 Commandments. What's the first commandment? Worship only God.
Correct.
Well, no, the first commandment is always put God first. The second commandment is worship only God, not statues, not idols. Don't put anything above God, or, you know. So the thing is, when you look at that, it's like we take our eyes off God and we put it onto ourselves. And that's when pride becomes, well, that's when you do fall.
Actually, that makes sense.
Because it's taking yourself away from God, turning away from God and saying, you know, because the thing is, we talk about favour. Now, everybody wants favour. And I think favour is great, but favour comes with great responsibility. Because I just think that, you know, we ask God for favour and that's great. And then, of course, when things are going fantastic in our lives, we're all like, woohoo, aren't we? And then we start to think, we're actually doing this by ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually me up there, you know.
I did this.
And, you know, and then God gets pushed to the side a little bit. And then that's when it becomes very dangerous. And, you know, you're playing a dangerous game and you're sort of sliding off the edge a bit and not concentrating on God. Yeah,
look, that's, I have to say, I don't think we've spoken about that before.
No.
But that's pretty good. You've given a pretty clear, you've given some clear dialogue around what I said about that, you know, when does pride become the sort of pride that happens before a fall, and that's pretty good. I guess where you take your eyes off God is one way of looking at it, but also when you believe that it's all in your control.
Correct.
And you've done this on your own. When, especially as a Christian, you just know that that's not the case, but you're falling into the trap of thinking that it is, believing that it is. But
Greg, so many people in the Bible, and I know a great example is King David. Now, he'd gone through quite a bit in his earlier life, but also the fact that he was going to be king of Israel, and he was. And he was a great man, won many wars because God was with him. But of course, one night he sees this beautiful woman, and of course he falls in love with her, or he lusts after her, I should say. But the thing is, she's actually married to somebody else.
It's good to be the king.
Yeah, well, sometimes. But she's married to somebody else. Now, because I think he thinks he's so great, he can have whatever he wants, he goes after this woman. He has her husband killed, put on the front line of a war so that he is killed, and he takes her. So now basically...
That's a blockbuster movie, isn't it?
Well, it is, because then there is a little bit of stuff that happens after that, if you want to read that, about King David, is that it's actually not all good. And I think he comes to a point where he's just... His child dies that he has with her, and he's on the floor and just realises, you know what? It's just all come to an end, really, for me, because of what's happened, what I've done.
Yeah, he lost control.
And and I think you can get onto that roller coaster of yes, I'm so fantastic, and then you do things that really you shouldn't be doing, and then you keep going and you keep going, and it just builds up. And I think in the end, something has to give.
Yeah. Look, I don't know how much I can add to that, other than we can take that story and translate that into our own lives.
Exactly, and we have to do that.
You have to do it. It's a lot of work being a Christian, isn't it? Really, it is.
Definitely.
But I have to say, I don't know why I'm going to this place, but I will, that, non-Christians think that being a Christian can be boring, but I have to say, it's the total opposite.
It's true.
It's a big job.
Yeah, it is. And we have to, look at we're looking at every aspect of our lives, of what God starts to bring up in us.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have to start to deal with it, which is, sometimes full on.
Oh, no. It's actually, like I just said, it's a big adventure.
But it can be very freeing as well, Greg.
Absolutely. I'd love to see a book titled something like, the adventure of being a Christian or something like that, because it is an adventure, and it's an amazing journey.
Well, Greg, we have to stop here, and we're going to go for a break, but we'll be back later.
These pesky breaks.
We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to Man, Woman, God. I'm with Erin Goedhart, who is our resident critic, and tonight she will be reviewing a book. Erin, welcome back again.
Thank you for having me.
Now you have a book for us.
I do.
Ooh, tell us all about it.
Well, look, just before I get into the book, I thought it would be great to talk a little bit about how important books are. Primarily, they're a way of transmitting information. But there's so much more than that. In olden times, people tried so hard to transmit information any way they could, even if it was a cave painting. So we're so blessed to have books. And knowledge isn't recorded just for posterity. It's also a way of helping people who are coming after us, helping to make their journey a little bit better. There is no greater example of this than the world's #1 bestseller of all time. It also happens to be one of our oldest texts. Of course, I'm speaking of the Holy Bible.
Which we all have.
We do. Now, the book I want to tell you about today isn't quite as broad as the Bible. It's a book about parenting.
Oh.
Now, parenting is one of the greatest blessings, but also one of the greatest challenges we can ever experience.
I hear you.
And as we all know, children are not delivered to us with instruction manuals. So I've always wanted as much help as I could get as a mum of 2, as I'm sure most parents do. Now, I have spoken to some parents who feel that reading a parenting manual is a little bit like admitting that they're not good enough. But I feel God has inspired some incredible authors to help pass on information and support parents in this role of a lifetime. And besides, if you read your Bible, you'll see God had plenty of problems with his kids too.
Exactly.
Now, I have had so many parenting books that have helped me navigate whichever parenting stage I was in at the time. For pregnancy and birth, I loved Up the Duff by hilarious author Kaz Cook.
Oh, she's funny.
For my first 12 months as a new mum, I depended upon Babies by Dr. Christopher Green. And now I'm reading all sorts of things related to the teenage years. But the book I would like to tell you about today is called Parenting for Character, and it's by Andrew Mullins. Now, I was privileged to attend a parenting seminar with Andrew some years ago, and his book has been an invaluable resource to my husband and I ever since. Andrew has over 30 years' experience dealing with children and families from all walks of life in his role as an educator and high school principal.
Okay.
So Parenting for Character is a little different, that instead of focusing on a particular age group or stage, it talks about the fact that our children are going to be adults for a lot longer than they are kids, so we need to prepare them for adulthood. Andrew suggests that we do this by concentrating on some specific character qualities that we want to see in them as adults. Now, we all want our kids to be happy, and I think we can agree that true happiness and being a person of good character go hand in hand. So Andrew talks about certain character qualities such as responsibility, sound judgment, fortitude, and courage. And he suggests that we develop these in our children by laying in them a foundation of good habits. Habits such as optimism, compassion, loyalty, and honesty. When we do this, we are truly equipping our children for life. Now, one of my favourite stories in this book that I'd like to tell you just quickly
Go for it.
is that of a 15-year-old boy. He'd really like a new pair of Nike sneakers. Now, the problem is they're about $300.
Gosh.
They're just not in the family budget. Now, Mum and Dad explain this, but this son just wants them so much. It seems like every other kid has them. So he keeps harassing Mum and Dad for the sneakers. Until one night, his very wise dad says to him, "Son, truce. Tonight, let's not talk about the sneakers, but you and I go out for dinner, just the two of us." The son readily agrees, and off they go out for dinner to an inner city soup kitchen in Sydney. Now, as they're standing in line with hundreds of homeless people waiting for their cup of soup, this son quietly notices to himself the distinct lack of new Nike sneakers in the queue. And he realises in a very tangible way how incredibly blessed his life is. Consequently, the son never asks his dad for these expensive shoes again, and 2 years later, as a 17-year-old, he is now volunteering one night a week at that soup kitchen.
Beautiful story.
What an incredible
Amazing.
opportunity for this dad to instill good character in
Exactly.
his son. Now, what parents need to know about this book is that by the time you get to the end, it becomes incredibly clear that the best way to instill good character in your children is to lead by example. So if as a parent you struggle with issues of compassion, courage, honesty, for example, then your kids probably will too. So we need to be working on these character traits in ourselves while at the same time working with our children. Having said that, I maintain that this is the best parenting book I own, and Dr. Tim Hawkes, who also reviewed this book, who is an author himself and at the time was principal of the King's School, talked about this book as being essential reading for parents who want to raise children who are socially responsible and morally strong. Now, that's absolutely what I want for my children,
Definitely.
as I'm sure every parent does. So I hope you're able to get a copy of this book and read it for yourself very soon and enjoy it as well.
I will be. Now, Erin, how do people, because, you know, parenting, as you said, is, you know, an incredible gift that we have, but it is also hard. How do we, in such busy lifestyles, how do we manage to keep our marriages going, have, you know, great kids that are really going for God? How do we put all of that together and have, you know, a balance of everything?
Well, I think that's a really good question. What I've loved about this book is it's something that we have referred to over and over again. So not just when our children were toddlers and preschoolers, when they were in primary school, and again when they were teenagers. And what you'll find in this book is a list of the character qualities to develop in your children and a bit of a checklist to see how
Right.
you're going. So that's a really great way to monitor what your kids are doing, but also take some time out, maybe have a parenting session, just you and your partner, and have a look at how you're going overall. Because what you'll find is as you're trying to instill these qualities in your kids, you need to instill them in yourself as well. So it's a good opportunity to get balance throughout the whole family.
Very true. Thank you so much, Erin, for coming and reviewing that book.
A pleasure.
And we'll see you next time.
Definitely.
We'll be back with more after the break. Welcome back to Man, Woman, God. I'm here with my husband, Greg. Now, Greg, that was
Nikki.
Actually a really good review from Erin.
Fantastic.
Wasn't it?
Yeah,
About,
really good. She's doing a great job.
She is, about parenting, because I have to say, we are parents.
Parents, yeah. 2 lovely children.
And it is a tough job.
Yeah.
I think when you get married and you think, oh yes, let's have kids, and the time when you decide to have children, it's all la la la, great. But I think often we don't stop and actually think, hang on a moment, let's prepare ourselves for children. Like, how are we going to bring them up? Because sometimes we prepare ourselves for marriage, or do we? I don't know. A lot of people do. We did.
Sometimes people put more research into the car they're going to buy than who they marry.
Well, that's true. But also, Greg, going back to parenting, as we were saying, about preparing ourselves. It's hard. It's hard work. But I think we need to still keep reading and still...
It's a work in progress.
But the thing is, Greg, I think asking for forgiveness is also a good thing. Always saying, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I think always being open and honest with your kids and saying you are sorry. I think that's always a good thing to do, don't you think?
Yeah, look, it's... I can't remember life without kids, actually.
Yeah.
It's very hard to go back to pre-kids. And we've, Zane's 8, and for 8 years we've had children. But it feels like all my life I've had kids, it's a weird thing. But do you feel the same way about that?
Totally.
Well, there you go. So it's a tough job, but it's a very enjoyable job. I love having kids. I love having my kids. And you being their mother. And it's... Yeah, it is tough and all that, and it's a work in progress. I did mention that it's a work in progress earlier, and
it is.
It has to be that, because you're constantly learning and discovering, and your kids are doing the same, and they come up with different challenges and different questions about life, and there's always the question or the action from left field, and then you're trying to guide them, and you think, hang on, did I do that the right way or the wrong way? Instinct, a lot of it is instinct. And, but I really like that parenting for character.
Yes.
That's a big ask.
Well, I did like the story that Erin mentioned about the boy who kept asking for these expensive runners, and then his father finally took him to, a homeless shelter to feed some people. And I just thought a soup kitchen. But, the thing is, we need to think outside of the box a bit, don't you think? Because,
Absolutely.
who would have thought of that, doing that? I probably wouldn't have. But we need to make our kids see that, there's actually a big world going on around them. They're not the centre of the world. And really, wanting a pair of runners that are very expensive, well, you know what? In a few years' time, you're not going to be wearing those runners.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard... It's hard for kids not to want.
Well, exactly.
I remember wanting things when I was a kid, or a child. But these days, it's even more.
Yes.
The media and TV and all that is far more demanding.
Sure.
And you've got to be up to date with the latest and greatest, whatever it is.
Exactly.
And what I've noticed nowadays too is that it's not just the one thing; it's a collection. So you get one of a collection, and then you have to get the rest of the collection.
Correct.
Whether it's Skylanders or playing, those footy cards or whatever it is. And you've got to try and just keep up with all that and keep filtering all those things and determining the appropriateness for your child to be involved in whatever it is in accordance or in alignment with your Christianity and your beliefs. Yeah.
Something I do with our kids, Greg, and I always want to, often when they want something, it's like, and it's something expensive or something big, like we'll usually say, no, it's for your birthday or Christmas, but it's also asking God. You say to your kids, ask God if he would like you to have that, because I think they need to get into a routine, into a pattern of saying, okay, well, you know what, I can't really decide for myself whether this is good, and sometimes I can't decide either. I just think, well, it might be good, but it might not be, but the creator of the universe knows good and bad.
Absolutely.
So he can actually speak to all of us, and he wants to speak to little children as well. That's why Jesus said, you know, let the little children come to me, because it's all about them. It's about coming as a child to him. But also that the fact that, you know, God wants to tell them what's right and what's wrong. And I think I really like getting into that whole thing of, you know, ask God, well, what does he think? Does he think it's, and if it's okay, if you feel God's saying it's okay, well, it's okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I just know that other people have said to my kids, well, you know, that's evil, blah, blah, blah. And I've said to my kids, well, you know what, you can rest easy because you've asked God. And God's just said that's fine. Sometimes he might not say it's fine, but, you know, sometimes he will. So you just have to rest easy that you have asked God, and there is peace around that. Yeah,
and many times they've explained that to me, that you've gone down that path with them, you know. Giving them the authority to make that decision.
Exactly, and that's what we need to do. We need to allow our kids to make decisions.
Absolutely, and to make to filter things, to understand that not everything is appropriate, and, you know, develop some sort of measure of appropriateness. Correct. I think that's really healthy.
Correct. And we need books to tell us things. You know, we need books to guide us.
Of course.
And that's what I loved about that whole parenting thing, because, you know, the family is being bombarded, isn't it? It's being bombarded from left, right,
I was looking at some
centre.
stats the other day, and we have in Australia something like just over 100,000 marriages in any 1 year. It's like 110 or 120,000. And there's just over 50,000 divorces in any 1 year.
Incredible.
So that's nearly 50% of the marriages taking place is being counteracted by 50% of divorces. Did I say that the right way? I think I did. Yeah, pretty much half of the people getting married are getting divorced.
I know.
Not the same people, but in terms of numbers. That's just mind blowing. Something's wrong somewhere. The family nucleus is being eroded away. And if you just look at the media, television and the media, there's not many shows on about families.
No.
And family should be the nucleus. There's many things about, you know, many series or shows about men living single lives, or men living together as single people, or women the same thing, or friends living together. But there's nothing about the family that I can think of offhand.
Together. Well, that's all we have for tonight, Greg.
Oh, you're cutting me off there, just as I'm getting involved.
But we'll see you again, I'm sure, sometime very soon. Thanks again for joining me.
My pleasure.
Well, that's all we have for tonight. We just pray the love of God be with you, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.